How many times do you have to be ignored before you take the hint? The thought hit me like an unexpected slap. Sharp, cold, undeniable. It was a Friday night and I was alone again. The glow of my phone screen reflected on the table, an artificial light in a dark room. I had checked it 7 times in the last 15 minutes, hoping, wishing, willing a message to pop up. Nothing. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe evenly. It's fine. People were busy. They'd get back to me eventually, right? Still, I unlocked my phone, scrolling through the messages I'd sent that evening. One to Lena, a friend I hadn't seen in months. I had reached out, asking if she wanted to catch up. Hey, it's been forever. Wanna grab coffee this weekend? The message sat there, delivered but ignored. One to my cousin, Jess, who only ever spoke to me when she needed something. Hey, have you been? We should hang out soon. She had read it. No reply. And one to Ethan, the guy I had been talking to. Well, more like chasing. He responded when it was convenient for him, and somehow I still clung to the possibility that he cared. My last text? Hey, how's your day been? Left on read. For hours, a deep, sinking feeling settled in my chest. Was I always the one chasing? My hands tightened around my phone. No. I was overthinking. They'd reply eventually. They always did, eventually. Right? I scrolled up through past conversations, looking for reassurance. Instead, I found a pattern I had been blind to for too long. Lena, me, hey, how have you been? Wanna catch up? Her, sorry, been super busy. Let's talk soon. That was 3 months ago. Jess, me, miss you. When are we hanging out? Her, OMG, I have so much to tell you. Let's plan something soon. She never followed up. Ethan, me, you free this weekend? Him, maybe, I'll let you know. He never let me know. It hit me all at once. I was always the one trying. Always the one waiting. Always the one hoping for a response that never came. I had spent so much time convincing myself that people cared when their actions screamed otherwise. I ran a hand over my face, my stomach twisting with something ugly, shame, anger, exhaustion. Had I really been this desperate for connection? I thought back to all the times I had rearranged my schedule, made time for people, showed up even when I was exhausted. And for what? For people who didn't even think of me unless it was convenient for them. A memory surfaced. Last month. My birthday. I had spent the entire day glued to my phone, waiting for messages, calls, something. My notifications were filled with generic, HBD texts. Some people didn't even text at all. People I had celebrated, supported, and cared for didn't even acknowledge me. I had cried that night, alone in my room, telling myself I was being too sensitive. But was I? Was it too much to want to be wanted? Was it wrong to wish that, for once, someone else would reach out first? I glanced at my phone again, a dull ache settling in my chest. They're not thinking about you. The realization was harsh, but it was the truth. And I was tired. So tired. That night, something inside me cracked. I didn't say anything out loud. I didn't scream or cry. But I felt it. The beginning of an ending. The end of waiting. The end of excuses. The end of chasing people who didn't care. It started as an experiment. One small, deliberate decision. I stopped reaching out first. At first, I told myself it wasn't permanent, just a test. A way to see if I was imagining things, if I was really the only one holding these connections together. If they cared, if they valued me, if I actually mattered, they'd notice. They'd check in. They'd ask if I was okay. Days passed. Then weeks. The silence was deafening. Lena didn't text. Jess didn't call. Ethan? He posted stories of nights out, group dinners, concerts, places I had never been invited to, people I hadn't even heard of. But no message. No casual, hey, haven't heard from you in a while, everything okay? Not even a lazy what's up. I watched them live their lives, move through their days untouched by my absence, and it made my stomach turn. Because for the first time, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I had spent years chasing people who would never chase me back. The realization wasn't immediate. It was a slow, creeping thing, unfolding in moments of quiet humiliation. Like when I saw Lena at a coffee shop, our eyes meeting briefly before she turned away as if she hadn't seen me at all. Or when Jess tagged our mutual cousin in a post about family, her caption gushing about how grateful she was for the people who always had her back. I had been the one who stayed up with her on the phone when she had her first heartbreak. The one who loaned her money when she was short on rent. The one who dropped everything to listen, to help, to care. I read her words twice, then again, my chest hollowing out. It had never been me. And Ethan, God, Ethan. I had been pathetic for him. I saw it now, how I had clung to the scraps of his attention like they meant something. I thought about all the times I had justified his indifference, how I had accepted vague answers and broken plans like they were normal. One night, I let my pride slip, just a little. I sent a message. Hey, how have you been? A simple test, one last chance. He replied a day later. Busy. You. I stared at the words longer than I should have. That was it? After weeks of nothing? I should have left it there. Instead, I made one final mistake. Do you want to hang out this weekend? Ethan didn't reply. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. That was the moment something inside me shattered for good. I wasn't angry. Not at him. Not at Lena or Jess or anyone else I had wasted my time on. The anger was for myself. For how long I had let this go on. For how many times I had swallowed disappointment and told myself it was fine. It wasn't fine. It had never been fine. And I had no one to blame but myself. The worst part wasn't the loss. It was the realization that there had never been anything real to lose. For the first time, I asked myself the question I had been avoiding for years. What if I stopped? Stopped chasing. Stopped proving my worth. Stopped settling for one-sided relationships, for temporary attention, for people who only remembered me when they needed something. The answer came quickly. If I stopped, they wouldn't notice. And that was all I needed to know. That night, I deleted Ethan's number. Not because I wanted him to care, not because I hoped he would reach out and find me gone, but because I finally understood that he never would. I muted Jess's posts, not out of spite, but because I was done watching people call someone else their family when they had never made space for me. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Just a small step. Then came the next test. Lena's birthday was coming up. For years, I had been the one to organize everything, picking the restaurant, gathering people, making sure she had a good day. She never asked me to, but she never had to. I did it because I cared. Because I thought that's what friendship was. This time, I did nothing. I waited. The day came and went. She had a party. I saw the pictures online, the table full of people, the drinks, the laughter. I wasn't invited. Not a single message. Not a single, wish you were here. I shouldn't have been surprised, but the hurt still came, sharp and immediate. And then, like a slow unraveling, came something else. Relief. Because now I had proof. Now there were no doubts left. I could stop lying to myself. And when I realized that, the weight of it all, the years of chasing, the effort, the overthinking, the exhaustion, started to lift. I didn't cry that night. I didn't feel the familiar ache of loneliness pressing against my ribs. I didn't wonder what was wrong with me. For the first time in my life, I felt free. But freedom, I was about to learn, wasn't just about letting go. It was about facing what came next. And that part was terrifying. People talk about loneliness like it's a sudden thing, a sharp, obvious emptiness that hits you all at once. But real loneliness, the kind that follows after years of chasing people who never cared, doesn't feel like that. It's quieter, slower. It's the weight of empty weekends. It's scrolling through your phone, realizing there's no one left to text. It's waking up and wondering if anyone even thought about you today. I told myself I was fine. That I had made the right decision. That the hollow space left behind by those people would fill itself with something better. But in the days and weeks after I let go, nothing changed. My phone stayed silent. My world stayed small. And I started to wonder if maybe I had made a mistake. One night, the loneliness got the best of me. I opened Instagram, something I had tried to avoid. The first post I saw was Lena, smiling in a dimly lit bar, surrounded by people I had never met. Someone had written, "Best night with my favorite people." My stomach twisted. I kept scrolling. Jess had posted a group selfie, the caption reading, "Family is everything." A few swipes later, Ethan's face appeared, grinning in a picture someone had tagged him in, arms slung around a girl I didn't recognize. So he had time for them. I closed the app and sat in the dark, my heart pounding. This was the moment I had been waiting for, wasn't it? The test. Who would notice I was gone? Who would miss me? No one. I needed to stop torturing myself. I deleted the app, tossed my phone onto the bed, and pressed the heels of my palms against my eyes. I had wasted so much time on people who had never even thought about me outside of convenience. It made me sick. But the sickness wasn't just about them. It was about me. Because what did that say about me? That I had spent years chasing ghosts? That I had based my worth on the scraps of attention people threw my way? I didn't like the answer. For days, I felt restless, uncertain. I had cut people out, but I had no idea what came next. I had no friends, no social plans, no invitations waiting for me. If I wasn't the person who was always checking in, always reaching out, then who was I? Then, one afternoon, something happened that made it all crash down on me. I was at the grocery store, debating whether I should cook something decent for dinner or just settle for instant noodles. The quiet, numb feeling I had carried for weeks sat in my chest like a stone. And then, as I turned the corner, I heard a familiar voice. Lena. For a split second, I hesitated, my body reacting before my brain could catch up. Turn around. Walk away. But it was too late. She had already seen me. Her smile was quick, practiced. A social reflex, nothing more. "Oh, hey." I managed a nod. "Hey." An awkward pause. She shifted the basket in her hands, glancing at the shelves like she suddenly remembered she had somewhere to be. "How have you been?" "It's been a while." I knew what she meant. You disappeared, and I didn't care enough to check why. I could have lied. I could have said I'd been busy. Instead, I just shrugged. "Yeah." Another pause. She didn't ask where I'd been. She didn't say she had missed me. She didn't suggest we catch up. I realized then that I had been right all along. I could have vanished off the face of the earth, and she wouldn't have even noticed. She glanced at her phone. "Well, it was nice seeing you. We should talk soon." I nodded, not bothering to pretend. "Sure." I left before she did. By the time I got home, something in me had finally snapped. I had spent my whole life waiting to be chosen, waiting to be important to someone, waiting for people to give me the kind of effort I had always given them. But the truth had been in front of me for years, and I had refused to see it. You don't have to beg for a space in someone's life. If they want you there, they make room. I sat down at the kitchen table and let the truth settle over me. It didn't hurt. Not anymore. Because finally, I was done. The first few days after that moment were quiet. Not in the way my life had always been, filled with the hum of waiting, of anticipating someone else's response, but a different kind of quiet. A deliberate, settled silence. I didn't check my phone out of habit. I didn't scroll through old messages looking for signs I had mattered more than reality had shown. I didn't refresh social media to see what Lena, Jess, or Ethan were doing. I let them exist without me, and for the first time, I let myself exist without them. Then, something strange happened. I woke up on a Saturday morning with nothing to do, no plans, no lingering hopes of an invitation, and instead of feeling the usual emptiness, I felt relief. For the first time in years, my time belonged to me. I got out of bed, made myself a real breakfast, something I hadn't bothered to do in months, and sat down with a book I had bought a year ago, but never read because I had always been too busy waiting for someone to want me around. The quiet wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. Still, habits weren't easy to break. The pull of the past still lingered in small, familiar ways. A few days later, I caught myself almost texting Jess after hearing an old song we used to play in the car together. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I stopped. She hadn't reached out in months. If I sent that text, I already knew what would happen. She'd respond, maybe, with a quick, "OMG, remember that?" and then disappear again. I deleted the draft and set my phone down. The shift wasn't immediate. It came in fragments, in quiet realizations that built upon each other. At work, I noticed how often I used to apologize for things that weren't my fault, someone bumping into me, a coworker talking over me in a meeting. I stopped saying sorry for things I wasn't sorry for. I stopped forcing conversations that didn't flow naturally. I stopped explaining my silence when I didn't feel like talking. And slowly, the weight I had carried for so long, the constant effort, the exhausting need to prove I was worth keeping around, began to lift. Then, one evening, something happened that tested everything. I was walking home from work when I saw a notification pop up on my phone. "Jess, hey." It was the first time she had messaged me in nearly 3 months. No explanation, no follow-up. Just a casual, effortless hey. Like I had just been frozen in place, waiting for her to remember I existed. For a brief second, the old instinct kicked in. Respond. Act normal. Keep the door open. But this time, I saw it for what it was. This wasn't an invitation. It was a test. She hadn't reached out because she missed me. She had reached out to see if I was still there, still willing to make the effort so she didn't have to. I didn't answer. 2 days later, another message. Did I do something? That one made me pause. Because if she had to ask, the answer was already clear. I didn't owe her an explanation. I had spent too many years justifying my absence in people's lives when they had never done the same for me. I closed the message and left it unanswered. That was the moment I knew I was free. But freedom wasn't just about walking away. It was about learning to stand still. To exist without waiting, without hoping, without proving. And that part, the part where I had to face myself, was the hardest of all. Because when I took away the chasing, when I stripped away the people who had filled my life with half-hearted presence, I was left with a question I had never let myself ask. Who am I when I'm not trying to be enough for someone else? The answer didn't come immediately. But for the first time, I was willing to wait, not for someone else, but for myself. I didn't expect Lena to call. It was late, past midnight, when my phone buzzed against the nightstand. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. I had done well staying away, keeping my distance, letting go of the people who had made me feel like I was always asking for too much. But something in me, whether curiosity or some lingering instinct, made me pick up. Her voice was unsteady, the kind of tone people use when they don't know how to start a conversation they should have had months ago. She asked if I could meet her. She didn't give a reason. I almost said no. I almost told her that whatever she wanted, whatever she suddenly needed now, it was too late. But then she said something that made me pause. I need to talk to someone who actually listens. The words sat between us, waiting. I thought about every time I had been that person for her. Every time I had listened, comforted, given pieces of myself to people who had never done the same for me. I should have told her to call someone else. But instead, I found myself saying, "Where are you?" 15 minutes later, I was outside a bar I had never been to, watching Lena stumble out, looking like she had been holding back tears for hours. She didn't greet me, didn't make any excuses for the months of silence. She just stood there, arms crossed, eyes avoiding mine. "I don't know why I called you," she admitted. I didn't respond. She let out a breath, shaking her head. I thought I had all these people, you know? Friends. People I could count on. But tonight, I realized I don't. She gave a hollow laugh. It's funny, isn't it? You spend years around people, but the second you actually need them, they're gone. She was saying things I had already known. I had spent years feeling exactly like this, wondering when it would be my turn to be considered, to be remembered without having to remind people that I existed. And the worst part was, I had done it for her. I had been that person. I had been the one she could call, the one who always made space, the one who tried. And now, after all this time, she had finally noticed what it felt like to be on the other side. I could have told her that. I could have thrown it all back at her, reminded her how many times I had reached out only to be ignored. But I didn't. Because I didn't need to anymore. I let her talk. She told me about the friends who had left her behind tonight, the ones who only cared about her when she was useful, the ones she had always assumed would be there until she finally saw that they wouldn't. It was a conversation I had needed once, a realization that had broken me when I had first come to it. When she was done, she looked at me, waiting. For what, I wasn't sure. Maybe for me to reassure her, to tell her that I understood, that I would always be there like I had been before. Instead, I just said, yeah. It sucks. She blinked. That's it. What do you want me to say? She hesitated, then let out another dry laugh. I don't know. I guess I thought you'd say something different. I nodded, because I understood exactly what she meant. She had expected the version of me that she had always known. The one who would have rushed to comfort her, to make it easier, to make her feel like she wasn't alone. That version of me didn't exist anymore. Lena sighed, looking away. I should go home. Yeah. She didn't ask if I wanted to keep in touch. She didn't make any empty promises about fixing things. Maybe she understood, the same way I did, that some things don't get fixed. They just end. I watched her walk away, waiting for the usual ache, the second guessing, the pull to chase after someone who had never once chased after me. But it never came. I got into my car, feeling nothing but a quiet certainty that for the first time in my life, I had finally stopped running after people who didn't care. And it didn't feel like losing. It felt like freedom.